Hello and welcome to Cooking with Anand. Today we're going to be making pecan pie, and this is a really wonderful treat, great for the fall time or the winter time. So the way we start out is by putting 1 1/4 cups of flour into a blender, and into that we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that'll just flavor our crust a little bit. And then we will just pulse this a few times to make sure that all the ingredients are combined. I've incorporated all the dry ingredients together, and now I'm going to add in 1/2 cup, which is 1 stick of cold butter cut up into small pieces. It needs to be as cold as Antarctica, because if it's warm, then the butter's just going to melt into the crust, and then your crust won't be nice and flaky. So now I'm again going to pulse this into the crust until the butter chunks resemble peas. Now I pulsed this a few times, and the butter is about the size of peas, the butter chunks. So now I'm going to dust off my hand. Now I have some ice water, and we're going to use about 4 tablespoons of ice water. But it can vary the amount you use depending on the humidity outside and the type of flour you're using. So I'm just going to add this 1 tablespoon at a time. And the ice water is so that the water doesn't melt the butter, because that, again, would lead to a non-flaky crust. So now I'm going to keep on pulsing and adding water until it looks like a firm dough. Now that I have my pie dough, and it's a nice, stiff, sticky dough, I'm going to roll it into a 4-inch disc, put it in a container, and cover it with some plastic wrap, and keep it in the fridge to chill for about an hour. My dough had rested for an hour, and then I rolled it out and placed it in my pie pan. And now I'm going to get started on the filling. So in a saucepan I have 1 cup of brown sugar, and I just stirred it up to break up all the big chunks of brown sugar. And now I'm going to add 1 cup of grade A pure maple syrup. And if you notice, that slid out really easily. And that's because I coated the inside of the measuring cup with a little bit of vegetable oil so it wouldn't stick. So that was 1 cup of maple syrup, 1 cup of brown sugar. Now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of molasses just to give it some nice flavor and kind of a little bit of a contrast with the sweet, sweet maple syrup and brown sugar. I'm putting all these ingredients on medium heat, and now I'm going to add in 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and this will make the pie really nice and rich. And now I'm just going to stir that in and wait for this to boil and for the sugar to dissolve. While my mixture's bubbling, I'm going to make sure I have all my ingredients. So I need 1/2 cup of butter cut up into chunks in a mixing bowl. I need 2 cups of pecans. 2/3 of it should be chopped up in one bowl, and the rest of it we're going to keep whole to garnish on top of the pie. I have 6 egg yolks, and I use the whites for meringue cookies. And I made nice peppermint ones and vanilla ones, so go check that out by clicking on my face. Now, and I also have my pie shell that has been chilling, and so I have everything, and I can continue with the pie. Now my mix has been boiling for about 3 minutes, and the sugar crystals had dissolved, so I'm going to pour this on top of my butter and wait for the butter to melt a little bit. I'm going to stir it up because the residual heat from that sauce will melt the butter. My mix has now cooled, and I added 1/2 teaspoon of salt, And to help it cool down faster, I set it outside for a few moments because outside it is freezing here. And the reason we want to get it nice and cool is because when we add in our eggs, we don't want to have any scrambling going on because this mix, if it's hot, might cook the eggs. So now I'm going to slowly whisk in the eggs, and make sure you're whisking while you're doing this. I'm just going to add in the eggs and keep on mixing so I don't get any scrambled eggs, because that's gross. Now that I've added all my eggs into the mix, I'm going to stir in my chopped pecans, and it's a good contrast to have the chopped pecans and the half pecans, because the chopped pecans stay inside the pie and the whole pecans will float on top. So I'm just adding in the chopped ones right now. I put my pie mix into my pie shell, and I put that on another pie pan or pizza pan that's bigger, so in case anything spills out, it won't get stuck in the oven, because that's going to be a disaster. With the maple syrup and the brown sugar, it's just going to stick and bubble up and be burnt and horrible. So now with these other pecans, I'm going to dress this pecan pie up. So I'm going to start from the edges and just create a ring around the pecan pie. I've decorated the top of the pecan pie with rings of pecans, and I tried to take the prettiest pecans that I could find and put it on top, and I curled down the crust a little bit. And now I'm going to put it into a preheated 450-degree oven on the middle shelf for about 45 to 60 minutes. And I know that sounds like a giant range, but it really varies depending on where you are. And I'm also, right now, as soon as I put it in, I'm going to decrease it from 450 to 325. And that starting at a high temperature and slowly decreasing is what's going to help the pie set a little bit and make it so it has a nice kind of caramel feel to it at the base, and the pecans become nice and roasted. I've just pulled my pie out of the oven and it looks phenomenal. The nuts on the top are nicely toasted, so they bring out a lot of nutty flavor. And if you're not a big fan of using egg yolks, you can substitute the 6 egg yolks for 2 whole eggs and reduce the cream to 1/3 of a cup rather than half a cup. And that'll work. It just won't be as rich and custardy as this pie is. It's really flavorful, and the filling is nice and caramely. The crust is nice and tender and flaky, holds it together well, and the pecans are scattered through the entire pie with those nice whole ones on top to make it look nice and pretty. And I use 2 cups of pecans because that's what I think works the best for me, but normally you just put 1.5 cups. Well, that's it. Thank you for tuning in on Cooking with Anand.